A horrific mass shooting claimed the lives of 4 people in New York City last night. And before all the details could come out, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk decided to make some statements based on complete and utter assumptions that were proven to be wrong and false. So he wrote on X, again, before all the details of the perpetrator came out, that he was just in New York City all weekend with our family, never felt safe. So many people in the city who don't belong, praying for all involved. There he is making a reference to undocumented immigrants. And the shooter in this case was not an undocumented immigrant. We're gonna get to the details of who he was or is in just a minute. But before we do, it is worth noting that one of the victims of this horrific event was an immigrant, a police officer by the name of Didarul Islam. He's among one of those individuals who was killed. He was an immigrant from Bangladesh, and again, a police officer. And it turns out he was a wonderful person as well. In fact, a close family friend said that Officer Islam had been a mentor to young men in a Bangladeshi community that numbers more than 100,000 in the city. When the officer joined the police department, his friend and his own mother had asked him why he would pursue such a dangerous line of work, being a cop. And he told her he wanted to leave behind a legacy for his family, something they could be proud of. He is now dead because of this tragic shooting that took place in Manhattan. Now he leaves behind his pregnant wife and 2 other children. And as for the gunman, it turns out he was a Nevada man. I'll give you a few more details about the shooter in just a minute. But Cenk, Charlie seems to never miss an opportunity to preemptively politicize a tragic event like a mass shooting.
Okay, now it's clear. There's a very clear pattern both with Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure who else is involved, and I don't know what's driving it. I don't know if it's funding. I don't know what it is, but they are gung-ho to turn things back into the culture wars, right? So everything is racial, everything is about religion and ethnicity and blaming people based on who they are. So this is now a pattern with Charlie Kirk. He's now said it 3, 4, 8 times in a row. Oh yeah, the dirty immigrant, the Muslims, oh yeah. Zohra Mamdani on 9/11, Muslim, right? So look, brother, I'm not bringing it up, you're bringing it up. And you're bringing it up in a super toxic way. So don't tell me you don't like the culture wars, and the minute there's any kind of story at all, you're like, culture wars, hate the other side, hate them for who they are. Oh yeah, you just noticed there's immigrants in New York. Hey, dumbass, there's been immigrants in New York from day one. The whole point of New York is immigrants. Have you heard of the Statue of Liberty? Have you heard of Ellis Island? You're outraged in the year 2025 that there are immigrants in New York. Come on, man, come on. Because nobody's that stupid. That's why I'm saying, like, there's an agenda here, obviously.
Yeah, and
right?
also he attempted to kind of straddle the 2 sides in regard to what's currently transpiring in Gaza with this, intentional genocide that's playing out. But in recent days, he's decided to essentially regurgitate Israeli propaganda and has repeated the lie that there is no starvation taking place in Gaza.
It's the funding. Okay, Charlie, who is it? Okay, I know you're never gonna tell us, but like, oh, you just decided, oh my God, I woke up one day and decided to smear all Muslims, the most common Israeli tactic of all time. Remember, America, you have to hate the Muslims. The problem is not the giant Goliath in the middle of the Middle East taking $300 billion from us and starting all the wars and attacking all their neighbors and occupying 5.5 million people and taking away their freedom. That is not the problem. The problem is the Muslims. Come on, man. And nobody's that dumb, okay? I get that a lot of people were brainwashed into believing that throughout the entire history of American mainstream media. But if you're in this business and you see the news every day, you can't think that Israel's the victim and actually be an honest person. Like if you come from that background, you got family in Israel and you're massively biased, I get it, right? But you don't come from that background and you're like, yeah, starving children is awesome. The problem is the Muslims. Okay, then all right, dude, all right. I get it, you're spreading hatred for probably financial gain.
But how about just allow the story to develop before you immediately jump into your, ooh, let me use this tragedy and weaponize it for my own purposes and to appease whoever is like funding me to say the garbage that I say. Like, how about maybe think about your own credibility for 1 second, let the story develop, but of course you can't do that. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Who was the shooter? Well, the shooter was a 27-year-old man by the name of Shane Tamura. As I mentioned earlier, he was from Nevada and he actually drove cross country to Manhattan to carry out this horrific event. He attacked an office building in Manhattan, which houses companies including Blackstone, KPMG, and the NFL. So after he allegedly killed Officer Islam and 3 other individuals, he then turned his weapon on himself and committed suicide. He did carry a suicide note stating what his motive was. One page of the note accused the NFL of concealing the dangers to players' brains to maximize profits, sources said. A second page mentioned CTE and blamed football. A third page asked, "Study my brain, please, I'm sorry," sources said. So it does appear that he had an axe to grind with the NFL, and the building that he targeted did house the NFL. So he played football in high school, but he never played football professionally, and police have not found any evidence, or at least nothing has come up yet. Obviously there is an investigation going on, but so far there isn't any evidence that he had CTE. But there is some evidence that he had a history of mental health issues. We'll visit that in just a minute. But New York City Mayor Eric Adams stated that it appears as though he was going after the employees at the NFL. From our preliminary investigation, he took the wrong elevator bank up to the NFL headquarters. Instead, it took him to Rudin Management, and that is where he carried out additional shootings and took the lives of additional employees. Now, he did kill the police officer and then 2 other individual civilians. And this happened in the lobby of the building. I can't imagine what that scene was like, absolutely horrific. He killed the 4th victim and himself at Rudin Management's offices. Now, he did have a history of mental health issues as reported by ABC News. For instance, he had 2 mental health crisis holds in his background in Nevada, one back in 2022 and the other in 2024, law enforcement sources said. Those holds typically allow a person to be detained for up to 72 hours if they are thought to be a danger to themselves or others. And as we all know, mental health care in this country is a complete and utter joke. There is this allergy to holding people for longer than 72 hours if they have been proven to be a threat to themselves and to others. And instead of having inpatient mental health facilities to ensure that people who need the care are getting the care that they need, our country just releases people out onto the streets, and situations like this actually happen far more often than people realize. This happened in Manhattan. It happened in a building that houses, Blackstone and the NFL, which is why it's getting all the attention in the world. But come visit Los Angeles, where you'll see machete attacks by mentally ill people who are left on the streets to fend for their own. We live in a complete clown show of a country, and our politicians don't take it seriously. They don't care whether we're talking about on a federal level or a municipal level. They just totally abandoned their responsibilities. This guy was obviously suffering from some serious issues, didn't get the care he needed, had access to an AK-47 type assault weapon, and proceeded to carry out this horrific shooting that claimed the lives of 4 innocent people. Jake.
Yeah, so first of all, I was worried that it was Blackstone, they were going after Blackstone. Why was I worried about that? Because of the Luigi Mangione situation, which, by the way, that shooting happened only 15 blocks away from this shooting. So I was concerned that, here we go, people are starting to target executives and corporations, et cetera. Now, luckily, that is largely not the case, okay? So now it is in an office building, it is NFL, presumably executives he was going after, right? But it's very apples and oranges, so it's not really the same thing. So look, you always have fog of, they call it fog of war, but the first 24 hours you'll hear a lot of things and a lot of speculation that doesn't turn out to be true. Like, for example, the right wing's getting on CNN because one of their analysts, do you have that part of it or no? One of their analysts said that the shooter was probably white. and he got that from a police source, right? Now, it turns out he wasn't at all, but they found that out a half an hour later on their broadcast. So then they correct it, right? But people go back and say, aha, even though the guy seems to be black or Asian or something like that, they're saying probably white. Oh, they had an agenda. No, they didn't have an agenda on that one, okay? So now, in terms of what actually did happen, look, guys, we can parse this 1,000 ways. Like, first of all, violence is dumb. If you, football gives people CTE, so the NFL is terrible. So because it leads to people's deaths, so let me go kill people. Makes no sense. The 3 guys on the ground floor having nothing to do with the NFL, including the cop who was killed. I guarantee you right now, the person upstairs he killed is not an executive, it's just a random person, because he shot the first person that he saw, right? So, and besides which, what difference does it make? Because he's mentally unwell, right? That's why you do crazy things like this, because you are crazy. And however you take that word, if you're offended by it, I don't like, that's not the point, guys, okay? So now, look, to Anna's point, number one, we know what the common denominator is. They all have different ideologies, different reasons, different blah, blah, blah. The common denominator is guns. We also know that we can't do anything about it. This guy had an AR-15. AR-15 should be illegal. There's no way in the world that bill's gonna pass. It's America. And so I get, you could pass easy ones like red flag laws. We won't even pass those. But now, since the politicians are totally immovable on that, even though they should move, I know they won't. That leads you to concentrating on mental health, because you think maybe they're not such monsters, and maybe they could actually spend money to help the average American, so we're not constantly in mass shootings or the other things that go wrong, or people living in the streets, etc. So far, that hasn't happened yet.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't, because they don't care about us. Okay, I want to be clear about something. As we know, every time there's a shooting that makes headlines, like this shooting, you'll have the left, meaning the Democratic side, talk about the need for gun control. You'll have the right talk about the need for mental health care. They're both full of crap. Neither side wants to do a damn thing about it. Neither side will do a damn thing about it unless the American people get together and demand change. And to be quite frank, we do need to focus on mental health care. That is a problem. That is a huge problem all across the country. We all see it on our streets, especially if you're living in a big city. And it's unacceptable to use that as a talking point, and only as a talking point when it's convenient for them, but never actually do anything about it.
Yeah, and on that point, number one, Republicans cut mental health funding. After all their jibber jabber about, it's not guns, it's mental health, they go to vote on it, they're like, yeah, that's why we should slash mental health funding. Okay, then you guys never meant, but you guys, by this, like, I used to tear my hair out about this for the last 20 years as we've been doing this show. But now you all get it, right? All the politicians are crooks and liars. So you knew that when the Republicans say that that it's really a mental health issue, they were going to go back and vote against mental health funding. You knew that, right? Now I'm hoping that everybody's beginning to realize the game here. Now turn to the Democrats. So they do care about mental health, and at the national level, they do want more funding. Okay, then you go to the local level, and you're like, okay, there's obviously a mental health crisis for the homeless in all these major cities. So can we help them and get them to a place where they could get assistance instead of just going, hey, their freedom to hang out in the streets and do the things that they're doing? Nope, not gonna do it. No, we believe in wild, insane libertarianism, where we give people with massive mental health problems the freedom to die in the streets.
Yeah, and honestly, look, I can only talk about this in the context of a state as deeply blue as California is, okay? But as a Californian, oftentimes one of the other talking points that you'll hear from the Democratic politicians who govern this state is, the big problem with mental health is Reagan defunded the asylums. He closed down the asylum. We're talking about Reagan. We're talking about Reagan. We're going all the way back to the 1980s. This is California. Republicans have no power here. Zero, none. This is the highest tax state. What is your excuse for not implementing policies that provide mental health care to people who need it in this state? Please explain it to me.
Yeah.
This is why I have no faith in the Democratic leadership in this state, because they're pathetic. They have all the power in the world, and they still somehow manage to blame Republicans from decades past for everything that's wrong in the state right now. Come on.
Yeah, guys, first of all, are we talking about Reagan? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're talking about Reagan, literally.
So seriously, Gavin Newsom often brags about how California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it is, that's amazing. Only the rest of the United States China, I believe Germany and India now are larger than California. Then California comes in above Japan. Like, it is monstrous economy, and in an awesome way. Don't tell me you don't have enough money to reopen those clinics or those asylums, but in a humane way, not in the like ludicrous way that we ran them in the past with no funding and barbarism, etc.
They were abusive, they were terrible. We obviously do not want that. But why would we have to either deal with the status quo or go back to that barbaric system?
Yeah, and so think about that, guys. They do that false choice on purpose.
Yes.
No one like that has thought about it for a minute. You might not have ever thought about it, but if you're a policymaker, you get people in a room and talk about it for 5 minutes, you'd realize that the two choices aren't, all right, let's start up really barbaric asylums where we abuse the mentally ill, just like we did like 50, 60 years ago, or we let them die in the streets. Those are your only two options. Every rational person in the room would be like, why are those the only two options?
Yeah, we reject that.
And why are you guys saying nonstop, if you're Democratic politicians in places like California, that those are our only two options? What a ridiculous thing to say.
Right.
That's because they don't care. Look, all the money has to be funneled to donors and allies. Donors and allies, Democrats and Republicans. That's why you have no problem is ever fixed, which leads me to give the last word to one of our members on TYT.com. Shelby wrote, someone I work closely with came from the NFL and had worked with one of the victims, who thankfully is now in stable condition. These shootings really will impact us all, eventually, as long as our laws around guns remain as they are. So as long as all of our laws remain as they are, as unfortunately I've been telling you now for about a decade, there's going to be a mass shooting near you. Do not be surprised. It is coming in your direction. And now, unfortunately, dozens of people have written in over the years saying, when I first heard you say that, I thought, well, that seems maybe a little hyperbolic. And I just had a mass shooting near me, right? So that's what our politicians are doing to us. They refuse to fix even the most basic needs of the American people. Even when the mass shootings are inside our kids' schools, they say we will never fix any of your problems. They take all of our money and funnel it to their donors. Bribery has ruined this country. We need to end the bribery so we can get democracy and America back. Fightcorruption.us. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.